Zero Waste Humboldt is a young organization. We're really in startup mode. With the help of over 100 volunteers and support of the business community, we incorporated almost exactly a year ago. We're the only organization locally that specializes in waste reduction solutions. We provide three main services. One is working with local government on policy development and advocacy. Second is public education. That's an awful lot of what we do. Pick models that want to work with us. The North Country Fair is an event that has become a model for as a good demonstration that others can learn from about reducing waste. And certain businesses, and right now we're very actively involved with the co-op and their analysis of packaging and plastics. And then the third service is training and technical assistance. And that has become almost like a form of grassroots organizing and community development as far as getting more people trained in the methodology, the rigor, the metrics of the zero waste approach. We emphasize waste prevention strategies as a priority before materials were used, recycling, and composting, and the other strategies. Because the Redwood Coast region does not have a manufacturing infrastructure to support recycling locally and completing that loop within our own local economy, our own regional economy, the other emphasis that's important to us is creating local end-use markets, working with local businesses so that they can figure out how to use the locally collected material in their processes for making new product. So today we're launching the Zero Waste Solutions series. There's a few flyers out front. Any of you want to take them and post them in your offices. There are 5 that will go throughout the next several months, ending in April. And our kickoff is focused on food waste solutions. The magnitude of the food waste problem is a national disgrace. Locally, I find it's much worse than most of us are even aware. So the first step is, of course, learning about it, and the second step is figuring out how we can all work together to really take action and do something about it. We know that what we're doing right now is not enough, and that we need to do more and we need to do better to really fix it. And we're very positive at Zero Waste Humboldt, and we know we can. Come on in, folks. So one of the things, several of our presenters in this 5-event series will be from out of the area. But with this particular one, we're fortunate that we have in our remote rural region experts who have really focused on solutions to this particular problem of food waste. In their presentations, I'd like for you to kind of listen for key elements. My picture is I see all these puzzle pieces, and they just need to fit together. And so I'd like for you to listen for, as they talk about what some of these key elements are, and listen for how you can fit in and what part you can play to help solve the problem. So most of you know Juliette and Morgan, but I'm going to give a formal introduction. It's good to do that for our friends. Juliette Bohn is a sustainable development consultant. She led a 2013 U.S. EPA pilot project to learn how best to establish a municipal food waste landfill diversion program in a variety of commercial settings. Her master's thesis, Food Waste Diversion and Utilization in Humboldt County, focused on strategies to convert food waste into useful products. Juliette holds a master's degree in environmental systems from Humboldt State University and served as a Peace Corps volunteer in the Dominican Republic. Morgan King is a sustainability and waste coordinator for Humboldt State University, where he manages resource recovery and food waste recycling programs, advises students, and facilitates the infusion of sustainability into campus operations and academics. Morgan holds a master's of social science in environment and community from HSU and a biology degree from UC Santa Cruz. He has worked as an energy auditor and trainer, sustainability curriculum developer, and a Peace Corps volunteer from Nepal. Help me welcome and thank the two of them for doing this today.
For the slides? I don't know.
I guess that's me.
Do I wink at you?
I don't think there's anybody left in the building. Do you know if there's
Is there a door on
Minor detail. Hi. Well, while we get that figured out, I'll go ahead and get started. I definitely want to thank all of you for taking an interest in food waste solutions. And I wanted to start out tonight by asking a few questions and getting maybe a show of hands from all of you out in the audience. So first of all, who has ever felt bad about throwing food waste in the garbage? All right, who's ever thought there might be a better thing to do with this material? So how many of you have ever grown food in a farm or a garden setting? Yep, okay, good crowd. How many of you sell food as part of your business or make food as part of your business? All right, so this presentation is for you and for anyone else who has an interest in utilizing this amazing resource in our community. So,
no clicker?
Okay, if anybody wants to be my clicker, I'm certainly ready to move to the next slide. No, might just say the word click. Maureen, would you mind sitting there and one of the two of you? All right, so some of you might be wondering how it is I got to the point in my career where I was standing knee deep in a pile of food waste and enjoying the heck out of myself. It all started when I arrived here about 14 years ago to join the graduate program at Humboldt State University, during which time I had the opportunity to be on a student design team that looked at making hydrogen fuel from our landfill gas resource. Now, what we found was it was very difficult because landfill gas is hard to collect and very inconsistent. It's dirty because it's mixed with other things in the waste stream, and it's far away from the customers that would ultimately need to use that hydrogen fuel. So I began thinking, well, what the heck is the source of this methane gas coming out of landfills? And it turns out it's just organics. It's the food waste and the yard trimmings and the glass trimmings. It's not anything else that's going into the landfills. So it occurred to me, well, what if we didn't put this material in the landfills and we kept it out and were able to make our renewable fuel closer to the people who would use it, contain and capture all of it, and really get the benefits out of this material without losing anything. I kind of delved into this further and really found there were a tremendous amount of co-benefits, environmental benefits, soil building benefits, and the list goes on, and this is what I'm here to share with you this evening. So my hope, as I share all this with you, is that you'll walk away this evening and look at your pizza crust and your melon rinds and your moldy leftovers and smile with a vision of opportunity. So with the next slide, I want to go over some of the key takeaways I'm hoping that you'll walk away with this evening. First of all, food waste reduction is here. Organic waste will be banned in California by the year 2025. This is 10 short years away. So given that there are tremendous opportunities to be gained from diverting this food waste, I hope that you will be motivated to get started right away. Some of these opportunities that we'll be talking about tonight include reduced food insecurity, increased self-reliance, a new positive economic ripple effect in our community, reduced pollution, and enhanced recyclability of other materials. We don't have to wait around for advancements in technologies. Proven solutions exist now and are ready for the taking. So in addition to that, we are poised to succeed. We have groups like Zero Waste Humboldt, we have expertise, we have sites, we have everything that we need in Humboldt County, as Maggie mentioned, in order to be successful. Next slide, please. Why should we care? There are many reasons, but the key reasons are this: environmental pollution from organic waste put in landfills. When organic waste is put into landfills, it decomposes anaerobically because we keep piling waste on top of that waste. And in doing so, or landfills release in an uncontrolled fashion methane emissions, which is a powerful greenhouse gas emission, 25 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. That means it's got 25 times the climate forcing potential of carbon dioxide. And it's an unnecessary environmental impact. Finally, there are economic losses as well. As Maggie mentioned, we have a tremendous amount of loss in the food chain to the tune of 40% from the farm to the transportation of these materials, to the grocery stores and restaurants that serve it, and finally to our plates. Now, any of you involved in these industries know very well what these economic losses actually look like for your businesses. To add insult to injury, once we experience those economic losses throughout the food production and consumption chain, we throw our food waste in landfills, and as it contains 80% water, we are effectively using diesel fuel to haul water long distances, in our case about 200 miles, to landfills. So not only is this expensive, but in my opinion, it's actually ridiculous. Finally, we're missing out on opportunities to be responsible to our friends and neighbors. Recent studies have shown that about 15 to 20% of the households in Humboldt County face food insecurity at some point throughout the year. Now, not all of food waste is fit for human consumption, but certainly a part of it is. And I think it behooves us to identify and direct that material into the hands of people that need it. So with that, moving on to the next slide, so all of the negative impacts that I discussed on the last slide are actually opportunities, if ready to be harnessed in our community. Environmentally speaking, if we divert the food waste out of the landfills, we can eliminate those air pollution impacts of the uncontrolled methane releases. In addition, we can avoid water pollution impacts from leachate, which is food waste that decomposes with the other materials and makes a toxic, acidic material that can threaten the health of any waterways near landfills. We can avoid both of these things by simply not putting the material in landfills to begin with. Finally, a less obvious connection is that diverting food waste from landfills can support zero waste efforts. Essentially, food waste is the icky, sticky, stinky stuff of our waste. And when we combine it with other materials, particularly paper, we contaminate that material and eliminate its possibility of getting recycled. Some of you in the back might appreciate this next one. At our material recovery facilities, if you keep the icky, sticky stuff apart from all of the other materials, you're going to be able to recover more of those materials easily. So I think it's kind of exciting to think about the fact that food waste diversion is going to support our zero waste goals and efforts using the systems that already exist in our community. Economically speaking, diverting any material from the landfill and remanufacturing or reprocessing it will always create more jobs than landfilling that material alone. And a recent report by the Institute for Self-Reliance found that 4 times more jobs are created when you compost food waste versus landfilling it. And this is simply because it doesn't take any effort to put something in a hole in the ground, but it does take some effort to create value-added products through the processing and remanufacturing of this material. So the income from those jobs obviously will have a ripple effect in our economy. And not only that, we have markets already for those end products. And this touches on something that Maggie was saying about our recyclables often have to be hauled to Milwaukee or China for processing and then be hauled again back to markets that can use those materials. Food waste is unique like this. We can close the loop with this material, again, 30% of our waste stream. We can close the loop and both remanufacture it here locally and then use the end products in our local economy. And the end products I'm speaking of, and we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, are renewable energy and, of course, fertilizer to feed our soils. Finally, the social implications of diverting our food waste mean that, first of all, we can have more food for people, but also we can direct food towards animals such as pigs and worm farms for small businesses that are generating value-added product from those ways of utilizing our food waste. And also, it simply supports community self-reliance by allowing us to use this resource locally and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. So, next slide, please. Let's look at what that actually looks like in a numeric form. As I mentioned, over 30% of our waste stream is food waste. It's the same throughout California. This means that we have about 19,000 tons per year of organic waste in our waste stream. which translates to 25 pounds per person per month. I'm going to say that again. We are generating 25 pounds per person per month of food waste in our county, which translates to about $25 to $45 per person per month of money lost, depending on your dietary and purchasing habits. Now, this could instead be translated into about 10,000 metric tons per year of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions reductions permanently. This could also be translated into about 10 to 20,000 tons per year of soil amendment, which is going to support our local agriculture industry, including the floral business, the cannabis growth businesses, and folks growing food, such as orchards, vegetable farmers, and vineyards. Additionally, if we put this material into an anaerobic digester, we can produce about 3,500 megawatt hours of renewable electricity every year. And finally, most importantly to most people, we can create about 19 to 30 new jobs in the collection and processing of this material. Next slide. So the state of California also recognizes these opportunities and has made it a priority that each jurisdiction, individual, and business take responsibility for reducing organic waste. The key pieces of legislation I wanted to cover here tonight start with AB 32, the Global Warming Solutions Act. This, as you all are probably aware, is a requirement that we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by the year 2020, not really so long from now. Following this, the state passed AB 341, which set a 75% landfill reduction or waste diversion goal for the state of California and instituted mandatory commercial recycling. This was shortly followed by AB 1826, which started mandatory organic waste diversion, which means the largest generators will start having to divert first, and then it will ratchet down to smaller generators. And the reason this subsequent piece of legislation was passed is to support that 75% waste diversion goal of AB 341, because the state recognized with 30% of organic materials in all of our waste streams, we simply can't get to 75% without addressing organics. Now, one you may not have heard of is Senate Bill 605, which was passed last year. This bill directs the California Air Resources Board to come up with a strategy and then implement that strategy to reduce the short-lived climate pollutants. Now, this ties back to food waste because, remember, landfills are releasing uncontrolled methane emissions to our atmosphere, which is a 25% more powerful climate-forcing gas than carbon dioxide, but it's also very short-lived. It only stays in our atmosphere for about 12 years, and this is important because this means that we can have an impact within our own lifetimes. And one of these, by reducing these short-lived climate pollutants, of which methane is one. So the state recognized they've got 3 key approaches in their strategy, and one of which is eliminating organics going to our landfills by the year 2025, which is, again, 10 very short years from now. Just this month, the governor signed AB 876, which requires local governments to plan for 15 years of organic waste recycling infrastructure. So, key message, organic waste is going to be banned from the landfills. So let's go ahead and jump on this opportunity and start reaping the benefits of diversion and utilization today. Now, I want to impress upon you that we are not starting from scratch. And Humboldt County has been working on food waste reduction since the 70s when HSU started diverting some of the kitchen scraps to pigs, followed up by Arcata in the 90s, who started to subsidize home composting bins and actually funded a pilot to collect food waste from some of our restaurants and get it fed to worms. More recently, we had a very successful pilot food waste collection program in Eureka that looked at what it would cost and what it would take to divert and collect organic waste from a variety of commercial settings. And we had some, need that next slide. So these are some of our participants. We really tried to get a broad range of participants. I will say you see Humboldt State University up there, which is not in Eureka. However, they were so motivated and so ready to go that they came to us before we had even started our program and said, we're ready, let's do this. The semester's about to start, we can't wait. And so we got the pleasure to work with them and to develop solutions and to try things out on a pretty large scale before we went live with the whole program. So that's why you see them included here. In addition to Humboldt State University, our full program included restaurants and bars, bakeries, food banks, assisted living centers, Costco and Frito-Lay, supermarkets, and business offices. Next slide, please. In just 1 year, starting from zero, in fact, starting from the first conversation as we knocked on doors to find out if people would be interested, we were able to divert 760 tons of food waste from the landfills. We found that on average, participants had a 50% reduction in their garbage service that was required. We were able to reduce 680 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and most importantly, we were able to increase community interest and experience with food waste diversion. Our haulers had a chance to figure out what would be needed to use trash trucks to collect food waste. Our participants figured out what was needed to keep the education going as they had a turnover of employees over time. We worked very closely with HSU to figure out how do you deal with 1,000 or 2,000 fresh students every year coming in and getting them into full participation of a food waste diversion program. There were so many benefits of taking the time to run a pilot, and now that it's over, we are ready to look for solutions going forward. Now, in order to reap the benefits of food waste diversion and utilization, we're going to have to apply solutions at all levels, from the individual to schools and restaurants, grocery stores, university and colleges, food manufacturing, and at the municipal level. So we all have a part to play, but we also all have something to gain. I'm going to go ahead and start with the individual actions and with the most obvious and cheapest way to start, which is prevention. Here are some of the ideas of how we as individuals can make a difference. Shopping with a list, mind your fridge and cupboards before you go to the grocery store so that you only purchase what you need. Monitor your food waste for patterns. If your kids aren't eating the same thing or you end up never getting around to certain leftovers, change your purchasing and cooking habits around that. Really look at what you are wasting on a regular basis. Use proper food storage practices, freeze extra food for later consumption. Understand use by, sell by, display by, all of those dates are made up by manufacturers trying to take a guess at what their peak quality moment might be, but they really are arbitrary and meaningless. They're not set up for health and safety reasons. So what I would say to this is use your nose and use your eyes and make a determination for yourself if food that is at, near, or past its use by, sell by, display by date is still good for consumption. Use old veggies creatively, in soups, casseroles, frittatas. Bring your reusable containers to restaurants and get your money's worth out of that meal. And finally, after all of that, if you have the space and the wherewithal, compost your food waste. Moving up to the next level on the continuum of solutions, we can look for solutions at the commercial level, so grocery stores and restaurants and institutions, by implementing practices that also are tied to prevention. Again, monitor your food waste for patterns. If French fries are always left, and that's a big part of the plate scrapings at the end of the day, maybe you don't need to serve as many French fries, and you'll probably save money in altering your portions. Establish a donation system. Let's get that food into the hands of the people that need it. You could also let employees take home prepared food that wasn't eaten at the end of the night. Reducing the food set out in buffets and displays and replenishing more often means that you're going to be both reducing waste but having fresher food out there for your clients and probably have increased customer satisfaction as a result. Offer half portions on menus. This is great because people aren't always hungry and don't always have the same appetite. Eliminate those use by and sell by dates and labels if you are the grocery store to minimize that consumer confusion, and maybe even do some education in the grocery stores about what do those dates really mean. Finally, reducing the use of paper cups and plates. I don't need to say anything about that. Establish school compost programs that can include a garden program, and worm composting can be tied into the curriculum. And finally, buy local produce to reduce the spoilage from transport. Again, you're going to be getting a fresher product that's going to last longer, and you're supporting the local economy. So even with food waste reduction and prevention efforts, we're still going to have food waste, but there are some local uses for this waste. I mentioned food banks. There are also pig farms and worm farms that can accept this waste. And again, home composting is an option especially if you have a garden and the wherewithal and the space to do this. But it should also be mentioned that these aren't solutions that are going to be suitable for the magnitude of food waste that we have. For example, there are things that pigs simply don't eat, and by California law, pig farms are only supposed to accept pre-consumer waste, or waste that has not been touched by consumers. And if they want to accept post-consumer waste, they're required to heat treat that material in order to break the parthenogenic cycle. Similarly, worms don't eat everything, but they also slow down in the wintertime, and they don't eat as much. So we have a limitation in capacity from those fronts, especially with food banks, because you have to only use food that's fit for human consumption. And finally, home compost. It's a great solution. I compost, but it's not for everybody. Everyone doesn't have the space. Folks live in apartments. Everybody doesn't have the time or the inclination or garden to live in. So for those reasons, we are going to need a larger scale. We are going to need to develop larger scale food processing and use here in our community. Now, this is the next step on the continuum of solutions, and it can be done through composting for anaerobic digestion, for composting and anaerobic digestion. And I want to just touch on some of the differences in these approaches. Composting, an aerobic or requiring air type of process, is a net consumer of energy in order to turn and aerate, requires the use of additional water, and is best when processing grasses, leaves, and woody matter due to the ability of those materials, especially the woody matter, to maintain the porous structure of the compost piles to keep them aerobic. Now, conversely, anaerobic digestion, which are essentially enclosed tanks, is a net producer of energy just because of the way that the organisms who live without oxygen, the anaerobic organisms, just by the way that they live and break down food waste, they produce methane instead of heat. Therefore, it's a net producer of energy. It produces water, or really just kind of separates that 80% of water from the other materials that can be broken down. And it's best when processing wet, dense, heavy loads of food waste, such as what we would see coming out of the commercial sector. Again, composting is going to be really great for the food waste coming out of the residential sector, partly because we can collect it with our yard waste bins, but also because it's not going to be as dense and compact as what we're going to see coming out of restaurants, because it will already be blended in with that more porous, bulky material. Now, I want to emphasize, both systems replicate what happens in nature. Bacteria, naturally occurring bacteria, drives both processes. Both processes produce value-added products at the end of the day. And if used together, we can gain even more benefits by their complementary relationships, which is pretty exciting for someone like me. Next slide. Now, what would developing a new facility look like in our community? Well, first it's going to take some form of financing. This has been very effective when public and private entities come together. Private folks are willing to bring forth that investment if the public entities are willing to give them a contract to set up a food waste diversion program, but then give them a contract for that food so that they can have that consistent input over time to develop a business model around. That type of investment can be enhanced by leveraging grants. Currently, CalRecycle has a greenhouse gas reduction grant and loan program that they've been running every year for the last couple of years and will continue for the next at least 3 to 5 years. The California Energy Commission has a lot of bioenergy, biofuel grants that can be applicable to digester projects. And there are carbon offset credits available for both composting and digestion projects that remove food waste from the landfills. Next step would be finding some land and what I like to call strategic siting. I can see all of these opportunities everywhere I go in this community for putting in compost or digestion at farms, wastewater treatment plants, or putting a digester at a compost facility. Really any facility that has a large demand for electricity and heat or a large quantity of organic waste that's in need of processing is a great candidate for hosting a new organic waste processing facility. Finally, the next step would be to secure the permits and the markets for the end products. Again, based on our historic experience in Humboldt County, our regulatory agencies have experience with what is food waste and how does it need to be handled in order to maintain the safety and environmental quality that they are charged with maintaining. So we're not starting from scratch. This is what it would look like to get moving, and with the cooperation and careful planning, we could get these facilities up in a year's time or less than that. So I'm about to wrap up here, and I want to finish by sharing a vision with you, or visioning together, of what success could look like in Humboldt County. If you feel like closing your eyes, go for it. But the big vision is that I can see success in the form of distributed organic waste utilization systems and facilities throughout the county. Now, this means more food will get into the bellies of those who are in need. Pigs and worms will get fat, and the small businesses that are making products using pigs and worms will be supported. Food waste could be collected with yard waste for composting, and then farmers could build soil using that local compost and grow more food. Also, important note here, I think I mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention again, is that when we use our diverted food waste and yard trimmings for compost, and the farmers put it back in the soil, we're actively sequestering carbon. This is a great co-benefit that can really benefit our community in the long run. Soil building is the base of the pyramid of survival for us land-dwelling creatures, and I think that we can't emphasize enough the importance of keeping these valuable nutrients out of a big stinky pile far away and incorporating them into our local soils. Finally, picture a digester at a dairy farm, helping them to manage their nutrients or their manure, which is a big need in all of our dairies right now. We can combine it with food waste, co-digest it, and generate heat and electricity to serve that facility. We could put additional digesters at our wastewater treatment plants to separately digest the food waste, but combine the gas streams in order to, in some cases, fulfill the entire demand of the treatment plant and sell extra, but in other cases could simply be available to power the critical loads if the grid ever goes down in a storm, and can help save money. This is, again, public funds in offsetting the costs of electricity to run that plant. We could see digester at a large hotel coupled with a fuel cell that very efficiently co-generates heat and electricity to power that facility. The opportunities, I'm telling you, are endless. And it's all I see when I walk around this community. So what can you do to help make some of this vision or all of this vision happen? First, of course, take individual action. Monitor and measure your waste stream, and then report on your progress. Toot your own horn. If you're a business, put it on your website. Put up signs in your business. Get a newspaper article about it. Really let people know what creative solutions you're coming up with and what you've been able to implement. And, I think more importantly, all of us can advocate for fierce leadership. We need to urge all of our government, local government, food manufacturers, supermarkets, restaurants to develop food waste reduction policies, programs, and best practices. So, with that, I want to thank you once more for taking the time and interest in food waste diversion, and taking the time to share in this vision with me. And before we move on to hear about all of the zero waste efforts and successes of Humboldt State University, I wanted to take just a couple of minutes to answer any questions, or more importantly, hear about how you want to get involved in food waste diversion. So thank you once again. So, who's fired up?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the products that you get from anaerobic digesters and what those look like.
Sure, great question. So interestingly, the landfills produces uncontrolled methane emissions, but when we put that same material in an anaerobic digester, we're using that same process, only it's in a contained environment. So it produces what is considered a renewable energy source, the methane or the biogas, and a stabilized soil amendment product that can then be folded in with a compost or even directly land applied. So the methane is considered a renewable energy at this point because it comes from food that absorbs the carbon dioxide out of the air to grow, and as part of that natural carbon cycle of the carbon being taken up and then being released again. It's just sort of taking a little, instead of the plants laying on the ground and eventually decomposing, we're using our capabilities and technologies to turn it into an energy resource that can be used to produce heat and electricity in a cogeneration engine or in a fuel cell. It can be used to produce a renewable low carbon fuel. Actually, it's a no carbon fuel, although it has carbon, but it's the renewable kind. So that's what you see a lot of folks moving towards right now, is producing a vehicle fuel to run local fleets and get those additional environmental benefits of switching from a diesel fuel to a renewable fuel. So basically the end products are renewable energy, soil amendment, and really harvesting water out of this waste to be used again in compost facilities or in our local soils. Anybody else have any questions? Yes.
Does Humboldt County currently have any pig farms that are utilizing the food waste stream?
Yes, the Sheriff's Work Alternative Program runs a pig farm out of Fortuna. There are some 4-H groups that have and raise pigs throughout the year. And then periodically, a small business will pop up. I think there are some out in the bottoms right now that are taking food waste for pigs from various sources. So in limited capacity, we do have pig farms. But I want to reiterate, there is the end story of the pig farms, which is where they go to piggy playgrounds in the sky. So there's this sort of a redundancy and continuation issue with relying on pig farms to take all of our pre-consumer waste, but it's definitely part of the solution.
It's pre-consumer.
Pre-consumer,
Unless you
absolutely.
heat it.
Unless you heat it. Everybody was listening. What about other questions?
Well,
Yes.
so how do we, since Shell has hundreds of pigs, that's what we call farm, how do we find ways to get the vegetable matter to the pigs?
The pre-consumer.
Yeah, that's great. Well, certainly getting connected with me and Zero Waste is one way. People come to me often and say, oh, what are the solutions available to me? And I'd be happy to get in contact, put them in contact with you. I think that I didn't know that you had all of these pigs. So certainly, get in contact with me and with Zero Waste, and we can start putting the word out and putting you directly into contact with restaurants, grocery stores, HSU, folks who have that pre-consumer waste, especially if you're able to arrange for the transport of the material. That's really the sticking point. That's a cost that somebody has to bear.
So Juliette, I have a sign-up sheet for
Great.
people who have particular interests. There's a place where you can, so that we can contact you. I see there's some different business folks here and people from different parts of the community that are a part of the puzzle, all those different pieces. So I'm going to circulate it. Please sign, put your contact information and what your interest is, and we'll make sure that we get in touch with you and move it forward.
Yes.
More questions?
Yeah, take a couple more questions. Yes.
You were talking about wet paper and separation. So paper is not considered organic waste, or?
It is,
Okay.
but it has sort of a higher value to, in some people's estimation, to be reprocessed into new paper versus cutting down trees. But when it becomes food soiled, it can no longer be recycled, and then it becomes a material that's suitable for composting or anaerobic digestion.
But at the same time, reducing the amount of paper in your organic waste is desirable.
I just think generally reducing single-use anything is desirable. It's not so much whether it's paper or plastic or anything else. It's just producing some, chopping down trees to make a cup that someone drinks water out of once and throws away seems like a big waste of energy, transportation, resources, water. Good point. So that's really more the issue, is the disposable culture that we've established. Just switching everything over to, this has kind of been a side issue with this, but compostable plastics. Well, you know, there are issues also associated with those materials, and really the ultimate goal is to have durable plates, cups, and so on that we wash and reuse, so that we're reducing the just rampant wanton destruction and uptake of our natural resources. So it's more that issue. Oh, yes.
We saw an article where they talked about having another garbage can where you put your food waste in, and a truck came around, picked it up just like they do all the other, take it to a place to be processed. How feasible is something like that for this area?
I mean, it's perfectly feasible. Will it require an increase in rates, garbage collection rates? Probably. Same thing happened when we got recycling, and this is really just the next phase of recycling. There are now cities who do offer those programs that have started to collect trash every other week in order to mitigate those costs, but it's perfectly feasible. We just have to be committed to developing new systems and being willing to pay a little bit more to have our food waste go to a place that can process it. So in all of these places that you mentioned, they all had to come up with those additional costs for the new bins, trucks, you know, the labor, like all of those things are a piece of the puzzle, which the other side of that is those are also additional jobs that are going to get created. So is it feasible? Absolutely. And it's not even that much of a cost increase. At the end of our pilot program, and really without, you know, looking at anything under a competitive bid scenario, we were, the estimation that we were given was about 5% increase onto your garbage bill, which my garbage bill is about $30-something for every 2 months. Carry the one, divide. Let's see, 30, 15. Wait, somebody with math, do this for me. So it's $30 every 2 months. It's $15 every month. 10% of that would be $1.50, and 5% would be 75 cents. So, you know, it's not that big of an increase in order to have this service potentially. And again, we can also work with our haulers and other creative solution finders to find a way to offer our every other week trash collection service once we have that organic waste system up and running well.
Well, and like you said, the jobs, and also the product that you have from using waste.
Mm-hmm. I like to say it's a win-win-win solution. Yes. So I'm looking at both of you, and you're right in a row. So either one.
Composting. My home composter says keep bones, oil, meat out of it. So what does your compost look like?
So that's more for home composting systems because those materials putrefy quickly and attract rodents and pests. Large-scale compost facilities can handle that material because they're very hot, about 160 degrees when they're in their active composting stage. So those materials we were able to accept during the pilot, and we would be able to accept during a full-blown program. So that's another benefit. I'm really glad you brought that up. Yes?
Are any of these anaerobic digestive fuel cell systems operating locally?
I don't know if an anaerobic digester with a fuel cell, I have to look into that, and please sign your name on the sheet and I will get back to you on this one. I should know. I mean, certainly, do you think Sierra Nevada, is that what you were going to say?
Sierra Nevada,
Yep.
UC Davis.
Well, UC Davis does not have a fuel cell, or do
No,
they?
not the fuel cell, but they have a
Yes.
number of experimental.
So I should separate the question out. Are there food waste digesters? Yes, in California, yes, and throughout the United States, and definitely in Europe, which is about 20 years ahead of us because they banned organics going to the landfill back in 1990. But thank you for bringing up that point. So Sierra Nevada possibly has theirs connected to a fuel cell. This is sort of, you know, what you're probably going to see more often are anaerobic digesters connected to an internal combustion engine, or anaerobic digesters producing vehicle fuel. Fuel cells add a layer of complexity and cost. However, they also add a layer of efficiency. So I just brought that up because we have a history, and the SHOTS Lab works actively on fuel cell technologies, and it's something that people get really interested in, so we'll probably see that as well. Yes?
I was just going to say, Gil's Onions down in Oxnard has an incredible fuel cell system. They grow onions for McDonald's onion rings type of thing, so
That's right.
the volume is huge. And they found a way to not have to transport the waste back out to the fields. They just incorporate it there, whether it's an anaerobic digester, I don't know, but they have like number 80 and 81 of the fuel cells in this country.
Right, they do use anaerobic digesters, and they're one of the big success stories. There's also, I think it's Wegmans, one of the big grocery store chains somewhere else, is hauling all their food waste from their supermarkets back and processing it successfully in a digester. So there are lots of examples of really creative solution finding, especially on, I really like that you brought up a nice farm application, because if you can use the energy right there and the fertilizer right there, you have enclosed a very tiny loop for yourself. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Thank you. Anybody else have questions? Because Morgan's presentation is going to be awesome. What about you?
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. Kind of getting back to the Tully farm, if there are hog farms that might have an interest in collecting organic material, the city of Fresno, in their zero waste action plan, actually proposed a livestock business pairing program that I think is really interesting and something we might explore as the city of Arcata will be probably developing a zero waste action plan. So there's an interest in that. Yeah, we could bring that to the city council.
Great. Thanks for mentioning that. I will be sure to research that first thing in the morning. Yes. It's
I think you touched on some of my question earlier was I organize Oyster Fest, and so we have this large challenge of a lot of waste usually created in one day, and we introduced like 5,000 still cups this year, and there were problems that brought up, and we're going to continue to move forward with that, but we didn't pursue the compostable cups because it sounded like it wasn't going to really be that easy to compost. I'm curious what the future of the compostable cups, but also the shelves go into reusable landscaping projects and different things. But yeah, do you work with festivals in any way to help, or do you have any suggestions?
Only in my capacity that I support Zero Waste Humboldt and working with festivals, but would be happy to brainstorm some solutions. I applaud you for already finding solutions for the oyster shells, and I wanted to touch on what you said about, you had some problems. So did we, and Morgan, TC, and others can tell you that Ron, we had to do a lot of creative solution finding, and so I encourage you to persevere. It takes a minute for people to shift and to see things in a new way, but ultimately we found, I will say contamination was our big issue, and we came up with a variety of solutions, but ultimately at the end of the day, we found that we had very low levels of contamination compared to when we began. So I say that to you in hopes to encourage you to keep going. As far as compostable cups go, there are big challenges associated with that I could speak to. I think that Julie could probably speak to more of them, but certainly I've got some compostable stuff in my compost right now, and I just keep watching it. It doesn't seem to be doing anything. The reason for that is it requires time and temperature, and they're designed to decompose in more of a municipal high temperature compost system. So forget about it, don't put it in your home compost pile. And I think it can be sort of a temporary move. I know that we switched over to a lot of compostable materials during the pilot because we were hauling it to a high temperature, large scale compost facility. And what they did, which was quite creative, is when they got them out at the end of a compost pile from their screening, they just put them back in at the beginning and let them run through over and over again. But there are issues with contaminating recyclable streams. And certainly I think as we're going back to sort of the disposable single-use issue, I don't think we can just buy our way out of our environmental problems. I think we have to come up with permanent, long-term solutions. You can pitch in. That's a pun, though, and waste pun.
I think those plastic cups that we all have for buying and selling beer at the fairs and festivals should instead of being called compostable, should be called allowable contaminant, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
And they will never, ever, 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 ever become a soil enrichment. It maybe is a bulking agent at best that goes in with the food and the other stuff that Cold Creek compost 165 miles away that we would transport stuff. That doesn't make any sense to me, but so that's my 2 bits. I feel pretty strongly about it, when they're put, used for containers like that.
Yeah, and I would add to that in the very near term future, we probably are going to have some larger scale compost systems locally, and that might be a stepping stone, baby step to more, permanent solutions. And
Portland just shut down there. They said it's not worth. We're not going to do it anymore.
I don't know.
I've heard Portland just discontinued their municipal composting system, saying that it's
there were some issues with that particular compost system and also with the community perception. I know I went and visited that system actually, and there was, I think, some misunderstandings of the folks that lived near that facility felt like Portland was ditching its waste to them, that they had to have it in their community. When they saw the steam rising from the piles, they associated that with odors and emissions. So I think there's a public perception issue, and also probably improvements that could have been made in the processing issue. But certainly I will guarantee you that Portland, wrapping it up, Portland is not going to stop diverting organic materials, and they're a leader on this front. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it over, and thank you all. Turn it over to Morgan King from HSU to talk about their programs and their successes. So thanks again.